Welcome to Books in the Freezer, a podcast dedicated to the deliciously disturbing world of horror fiction. I'm your host, Stephanie, and today I'm joined by my friend Jocelyn, who's a horror-loving academic librarian, joining us again.
Yes!
Because you were on the adaptations episode, so welcome back.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. This is always a lot of fun. I really enjoy it.
Yeah, I'm very excited because I've been wanting to do this episode for a really long time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm really pumped that this was one of the ones you suggested because as soon as you mentioned this topic, so many titles just flooded my brain. I was like, I can think of so many already that we need to talk about.
It is. It's a very niche genre, but at the same time, it's not.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where you're like, no. Wait, no, this does This does take place there. So it is fun. We'll have to definitely get into that.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you think is the appeal of workplace horror?
Well, it's pretty ubiquitous. Most of us have to work, and most of us have had jobs that really sucked.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think this is part of when we were thinking about, oh, there's all these titles, maybe we didn't realize it at first, and then once you start thinking of workplace horror, so many things pop into your head because work is such a large presence in our lives. We spend the majority of our hours at work, I think, and it affects every part of our life. And of course, that's going to leak into our fiction and our horror fiction. It's such a huge part of the way we live. And I think a lot of people have similar working experiences, and both good and bad, and it's kind of a common language. We can talk to each other about work and what sucks about work and what's good about work, and once you kind of tip it over into this horror lens, it's really easy to do because I don't know anybody who would love to work more than anything else. I know some people are kind of like workaholics, but that's not generally seen as a positive thing.
I would say maybe not anymore. I think we've had a very recent reckoning with our American relationship to work and productivity. And I think especially with this pandemic. But yeah, and I think especially, Jocelyn and I are speaking as Americans.
Yeah.
There is so much of an identity with what you do for work. When you meet someone, that's really one of the first things you ask.
Yeah. And I think we're getting better at that. There has been a discussion about, maybe don't do that. People feel very wrapped up in their self-identity with what they do, what their profession is, or their lack of profession, or how they feel about their profession. And it is kind of rude to just ask oh, so what do you do? Because, maybe they don't want to talk about that right now. And I think that also that close connection with self-identity also creates this opportunity to make it horrific.
I think so too. And I think this idea that you also have to put up in some cases with awful behavior or with being treated a certain way because you need this job for X reason, to pay your rent, for health insurance. There's so many things that are tied up to work where we just unfortunately put up with a lot of things. And like I said, there has been, I think, more of a cultural reckoning with
it's been so interesting.
Workplace conditions. Yes.
It's been refreshing, honestly. It's been really nice to see people in a way kind of take their power back from that dynamic, because it is really wrapped up in the United States in particular, our relationship to capitalism. I'm sure we could talk about this for a really long time. It'd probably be a different podcast. But, this country was really built on capitalism, and it wouldn't exist in the same way that it does now without it. I'm not saying I'm not saying I'm very pro-capitalism. I'm not, actually. I'll be very candid. I'm not. And I think our discussion about this workplace horror topic will really flesh that out. But we need to be doing this activity to survive. And a lot of the ways that our country exists relies on all of us engaging in a work dynamic. And it is a recipe for exploitation, as we could go back and look through our history and see many instances of. And I think us personally, people listening to us right now, and both you and I could probably look back into our own personal work histories and identify some moments where we felt exploited. But we don't always feel like we have the agency to step back from that. And I have been enjoying seeing people actually do that during the pandemic, actually look at their situation and say, you know what, there is another option for me. Not everyone is able to do that. But for the people who have been able to do that, it's been kind of empowering just watching it happen. It's been cool.
Yeah. Like, I know everyone has those like quitting like with a flourish
Yes,
fantasies.
yes.
Like I've never done that, but I've been living vicariously through all these text messages and tweets that I've seen. I'm like,
yes,
right on, good for you. I've never personally done that,
No.
but
nope, it stays a fantasy for me.
it's like that episode of The Office where they're talking about it and Oscar's like, I would like to maybe someday, but no.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh man. I mean, I've quit jobs before, but never in such spectacular fashion. It's always been kind of pathetic, actually. Or been like, so sorry, but like, I just, I have to go. Like, here's like 5 weeks notice. Like, hasn't been like a terribly impressive stand. But it is satisfying. It's so satisfying to see those stories pop up right now.
My last two were like, yeah, I think I'm just gonna do this maternity leave a little longer in that I'm not coming back.
Exactly.
Thanks. Bye.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, this is turned into something more now. And I mean, I feel very lucky that I am basically working my dream job right now. I love my job. I love my coworkers. They're friends to me. We work really well together. My boss is incredible. She has our back in such great ways. Like, I just appreciate my job so much now. And yet I still have days where I'm like, I can't believe that I have to leave my home, go to another place for 8 hours and do things that I am not really allowed to decide if I can do them or not do them. I have to do them. I can decide in what manner to a certain extent, but like, my time is not my own. My decisions aren't fully my own. If I wake up and I want to go for a day hike, or if I want to learn how to cook a new difficult recipe, I can't do that because I am obligated to go to this other place. And sometimes when I really think about that, I'm like, I can't believe I have to do this for probably many decades to come. Like, you just don't have control over yourself. That's another part of it that feels kind of horrific, especially for those of us who like feel like we want more control, or we have a certain relationship with control. It sometimes can be like, wow, I can't believe this is what we do. You know, our time is not our own.
It is. I mean, I very recently got like a work from home job where I'm like, wow, I can like do stuff and like still like get stuff done at my house.
Yeah, it's
while
nice.
being at work. If you're my boss, I do get my work done. Okay.
Well, that's the nice
I don't
thing.
think my boss listens to
No.
this, but
Not yet.
but even like when I had to go into the office downtown for training, and it was like 40-minute commute.
Yeah.
you
Oh
know, like,
man. Yeah.
dealing with parking, paying for parking
yeah.
out of pocket.
It's pretty
by the
bad.
way.
Downtown
Not fun.
Pittsburgh
Not
parking's
fun.
bad. Yeah. Yeah. Working from home has been nice. I get to do that a little bit now as well. Another blessing of the pandemic. We didn't have many blessings, but yeah, the work from home option has been lovely. I have a hybrid situation, and it offers more flexibility, and that's really nice. That does improve quality of life, I think, for a lot of people.
Yeah, I think especially people with kids. I mean, or honestly just wanting to get stuff done.
Yeah.
Like, it's just nice to be able to like change a load of laundry.
Exactly.
Like, in between tasks, or like just walk around my house.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, it makes a difference. It almost sounds silly, but that stuff makes a huge difference.
So have you had any like weird or creepy stories at work?
Oh my God, yeah. Well, I have been a librarian now for about 7 years, but my mom is also a librarian, so I spend a lot of time in libraries. Libraries are creepy. I have had multiple weird instances in a library. I also live here in Pittsburgh. I used to work at the main branch of the big public library system here, and that building has a lot of ghost stories attached to it. There's talk about someone who hung himself in the stacks at one point, and the building's pretty old, so it's got a lot of history, and so it always had kind of an atmosphere. But the weirdest instances I've had are in small public libraries in tiny communities. Like, those, for some reason, they just are always so strange. The buildings are always kind of falling apart. So there have been instances where I've been in like a basement. For instance, one particular story, I was in the basement of a public library in this area, and I was going through some materials, and a filing cabinet drawer just shut. And I was like, oh, absolutely not. And I was like sprinting up the stairs to the first floor, falling on the stairs, of course. I'm not very graceful. And I just like bust out of the door into what is the main room of the public library where all the computers are. And there are patrons on the computers being quiet, you know, just looking at their email. And I'm like huffing and puffing, busting out of the store. Everybody turns to look at me. And my coworker who was working behind the circulation desk was just like, what got into you? And I'm like, I'm never going down there again. And that's really not anything. I mean, a door can close. Like, it's not that wild, but it felt so intense at the moment. I also have had creepy experiences. One of my coworkers is an archivist, and sometimes she has to go to locations to pick up materials to add to the archives. And I went with her on a trip once to this old house that the university I work for had acquired, and they were going through all of the stuff that the family left. So much stuff. And this is like an old rich family. There's so many weird old rich people things, and it's just jam-packed full in there. And I had some of this, that whole trip was really, really weird. It was so strange. I thought I heard my coworker in the room next to me. I was on like the third floor, and I thought she had worked her way up there, and I popped my head into the room and I was like, hey, ready to go? There's nobody in the room. So, you know, stuff like that. It's one of those houses that just, you kind of lose track of where you are and you get disoriented. And there was a whole moment where she had showed me a door that was locked, and she was really annoyed by this because she wanted to get in. There was the last room that she had to get in to look at the materials, and she was like, look, this door is locked. I don't know where the key is. She jiggled the handle. It was locked. Like, it would not open. And then when we finally were getting ready to go, she's like, let me try this door one more time. And she tried it, and sure enough, it opens. And I, again, just tear out of there downstairs. I again fall because I am not graceful. I'm like tumbling down the stairs. She gets all worked up. She comes after me. Her sweater like got caught on the wall. It was a very strange experience. We laugh about it a lot today. But yeah, I mean, being a librarian will put you into some very odd circumstances, I have to say. And if anybody else has weird library haunted stories, I would love to hear them because I find them very fun. So what about you? Have you worked anywhere that like you had an experience?
Just like creepy in general. Like my last job, I worked overnight and did baking. So it was after like the restaurant had closed, everyone had gone home, and it was either like working with one other person or working just by myself.
Yep.
And I would have headphones in all the time because just the sound of like different machinery like whirring up in the middle of the night like creeped me out. So there was one night where before they were closing up, the manager was like, hey, someone called and asked for boxes for moving. So we have a big stack of boxes right out front. Like if someone comes and asks, just tell them that they're there. I was like, okay, fine. So I was running around. I had like my headphones in, and I go into the back kitchen area, and there was just a woman, an old woman in a muumuu just standing there. And I had my headphones in, and I was like, oh my God, what are you doing? What are you doing here? And she was like, boxes. And like those teenagers did not shut the back door.
Oh, jeez.
Didn't lock it.
Oh,
this lady
no.
just walked in here, and I was like, "Oh, they're out front, ma'am.
Oh my God, that
Not allowed to be here."
No, yeah, please leave. Wow, that's pretty terrifying. I would be very scared.
But yeah, after that, I had to check the back door like every night, double checking that this is locked. And no one's just gonna walk in here in the middle of the night again. Thank you.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely not.
So that whole like setup in general, just being like by yourself in like an empty place, and I'm like, and I would listen to like horror podcasts, like horror drama podcasts, where there's like the binaural, you hear like footsteps behind you, and I would be like,
you are not
why
doing
do I
yourself
do this to
any
myself?
favors. Yeah. That is, you're asking for it, man.
I know I had to be like, well, I'm gonna listen to like the Gilmore Guys or something cute
something
and funny
uplifting.
after this.
Yeah.
That's not.
My husband's my father-in-law, my husband's dad, worked for a long time before he retired at a state institution for mentally ill folks, criminally criminally mentally ill. I'm not entirely sure what the appropriate terminology is now, but people who needed to be supervised 24/7 kind of deal. And he worked the overnight shift, and he would routinely bring Stephen King books to entertain himself while he's working the desk. And he saw nothing wrong with this. He didn't think this was weird at all. I'm like, I can't believe you do that. He's like, what? They're good books. I'm like, yeah, but look where you are. Yeah, I don't know.
You gotta be in the right space. That's it's the same thing as like, turning the lights off, lighting some candles, just really getting in the ambient
That's right.
mood.
He was just devoted to that lifestyle,
Yeah. It's like, I need the right vibes.
Yes.
These are the vibes.
Yes. Oh, admire the commitment.
Oh man, there's a lot of movies that fall into
Yes.
this too. A lot of really fun ones. Oh, like I think I love Mayhem on Shudder. It is a ton of fun. It's like Stephen Yeun and what is her name?
Oh, was this one of the ones, quick plug, I guess, for your Patreon? Was this one that we watched as a Patreon
I was gonna
group
ask.
watch?
I'm like, you were on that.
Yeah.
You were on that group
that
night
is
watch.
a really fun movie.
Samara Weaving. Why did I not remember her name?
Oh, she's great. She's kind of becoming like a scream queen herself.
Yes.
Yeah, I like that.
I loved her in this. So basically this takes place in is it like a law office or something? But Stephen Yeun gets fired at the beginning, and it's because of something a higher up did, and she's like pinning it on him. And then Samara Weaving's character got turned down for a loan, so I guess it wasn't a law
some
office,
kind
now
of
that I'm saying that out
financial
loud.
institution.
Yeah. But then the building gets quarantined. They get shut down because they got infected with a rage virus.
Oh, yeah.
And we're told at the beginning of the movie that the legal precedent is like, whatever you do while under the rage virus, you can't be prosecuted for. So it becomes this like total bloodbath, and Stephen Yeun is like ready to get revenge.
Oh, yeah. Take advantage.
On the people that, it is such a fun movie.
Yeah, it is. It's a lot of fun, especially if you like kind of horror action comedy. It's weird to say it's a little uplifting, but it is, because it kind of plays into those workplace fantasies, or just like late stage capitalism fantasies of, we get taken advantage of, or we get the short end of the stick, or it's just very difficult to navigate things in our current life situation when things go wrong. And so it's kind of nice to see them take control over that and get revenge. It feels very cathartic.
Yeah. And I mean, it's over big things, obviously, like having a big mistake pinned on you, but even like, why did you use my mug in the break room? That is my mug.
We're all just bubbling over. At any given point, we're going to snap.
That also, have you watched Last Shift?
I don't think I have, actually.
Oh, it's a creepy one. It's a police officer. It's like her first night, and she just has to guard this old police station that's about to be demolished, but she just like is the night security person, just making sure no one comes in, and stuff happens.
I'm gonna put that on my list. That sounds really fun.
Very creepy.
Oh, perfect.
Alien.
Yes, and one of my book suggestions aligns quite nicely with Aliens. So
yes, it does.
If folks are Alien fans, I got something for you.
Session 9 about the asbestos removal crew.
What a horrible job.
The abandoned, what is it, a mental institution? Like what is the institution of some kind for that?
Oh, I'm sure.
What is the terminology for that?
It has changed. That's why I was struggling thinking of my father-in-law's old workplace, because they change it. They try to make things sound better than they are, or worse than they are. I don't know. But yes, I know what you're talking
Essentially,
about.
you guys know what I mean.
Yeah.
So, it's a old abandoned building, and it's this crew that's there cleaning up some asbestos, and
Already very cheery.
it's a good like psychological horror movie.
Oh, that's nice. I haven't seen it, so I'll have to add that to my list too.
The Autopsy of Jane Doe, like the two father-son morticians.
That's a really interesting setup. I mean, mortician as a profession is just, asking for some horror to be injected into it. Although I have spoken to folks who are morticians, or, who own funeral homes, and they're like, oh, please, it's nothing like that. It's not scary. It's not as spooky as you expect, but it does allow for the mind to wander. So it's always a fun thing to see it used, especially in the Autopsy of Jane Doe. It's a really creative movie.
I don't know. I know it probably becomes so mundane.
Yeah.
But the idea of just like a dead body, I would just be like waiting for it to twitch. I would just be waiting for it. Like I would look away and like look back.
I know, like, I'm going to get you. I'm going to get you.
I'm going to see it. Don't move.
Yeah, definitely. I don't know how I would handle it. It's not for me. I'm not in that line of work. So
no, I find it fascinating, but I cried so much during 6 Feet Under. I'm like, emotionally, I don't think I could handle this. Yes. I think I would feel too much, and you have to just be able to separate that.
Yeah, it has to just be
when
a
you're
job
in that
for
line
you.
of work.
Yeah. No, that show's incredible.
Plug for 6 Feet Under.
Yeah,
watch it on HBO.
How old is like 15-year-old show? I have no idea how old it is. Yeah, it's a great show.
Very old. Like it was old when I watched it. Like, I was like, I never got around to this. So
yeah, but it's wonderful.
If you guys haven't seen Satanic Panic, the movie that was written by Grady Hendrix, very much recommend.
Yeah.
That is about a pizza delivery girl who gets sent to this house, and she ends up coming on I guess would it be like a coven?
I suppose.
Of some kind?
Yeah. Kind of a, I don't know, a cult sort of group of sorts. Yeah, they're doing some ritualistic stuff, and she kind of stumbles into it.
And I think they're like, the person they were going to sacrifice gets away or something, and then she's just there, and they're like, good enough.
Yep. Whew. Good thing we ordered that pizza. I think about pizza delivery folks often, actually, and I'm like, this seemed really normal when I was a kid, and now as an adult, I can't imagine doing it. I don't know. It just, you go to all kinds of, first of all, I feel like I get lost constantly, and you just go to all these random places, and I'm sure it's mostly fine, but there have got to be some stories from people who've delivered pizzas or other kinds of food. I've never done it myself, but they have got to have some wild stories.
Statistically, it's one of the most dangerous jobs.
Really?
Oh. It's a very high mortality rate.
Oh, horrible to hear. Oh my.
Yeah.
Well, I guess that's why teenagers don't really do it too much anymore.
I don't think so.
I feel like it used to be like a teen job, and it's not. It's definitely not anymore. Yeah. Well, don't do that, folks. Maybe.
I don't know. I also have a terrible sense of direction. Like before GPS, I think when I was a kid, the idea of just like looking at a map and knowing how to get somewhere astounded. It still blows my mind, honestly. Like I have a GPS, and if it buffers for some reason while I'm driving, I'm screwed. I have taken the wrong turn on the turnpike and like gone to Ohio and been like, well, I'm in Beaver now. Like, what am I doing? What am I doing? Gotta find a way to get back.
Oh man. Yeah, I mean, this area does us no favors. It's pretty complicated over in Western PA, to be honest. I drove across the country with mostly a map. I did have a GPS, but it was a super old kind of like unreliable thing. And that actually wasn't as hard as you'd expect, because the highway system is pretty connected. So we were on that for most of the time. But I was going to LA for internships, and I did get lost on the Warner Brothers lot. That was like where I was living in that area, and I somehow got onto the lot in the middle of the night, and I couldn't figure out how to get out. So I was like trapped. It was not that, as it might sound like that was kind of cool or exciting. It wasn't. I was exhausted and panicked. I did finally find where I needed to go, but the GPS wasn't helping me.
Yeah, I'm sure not in like a small space like that. It's not like turn left in 10 feet.
Right, exactly. To a dead end. Great, thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it was really complicated and weird. But yeah, there are tons of fun like workplace-based horror movies. Like did you see Bad Hair? I think it's on Hulu.
I haven't. No, but I know what you're talking about.
It's very fun. It's very fun, and that one, is about this woman who she works at, I believe it's a TV station, kind of like an MTV sort of vibe. I think it's supposed to take place in the 90s. And they are either acquired or they get a new executive producer who wants to make a bunch of changes. And part of the changes are that they want, so it's a black TV program. It's like black music, black culture, that kind of thing. And one of the changes is that the executive producer kind of wants it to be less black, even though she herself is black. And part of that is changing of the hair for the folks who are like the VJs, for those of you who remember the VJs from MTV. She wants everybody to basically straighten their hair and have more, like, quote, good hair. And it is very interesting because the main character acquires this serum that is like a miracle worker for her hair, but then her hair kind of takes on a life of its own. It's a lot of fun. And I highly recommend it. I had a really good time watching that. I think it's still on Hulu. That's where I watched it a while ago. But I'm not 100% sure of that. And then also, like, The Thing would be workplace horror too, right? Like, they're up there doing a job and kind of stuck in place, and you know they didn't necessarily get to pick who they were up there with. They're all coworkers, and they get thrown into this wild situation. I mean, that's the other thing I think that is fun about workplace horror. Like, not only is it a cathartic feeling, but also your characters are thrown in together in these circumstances, and they did not get to pick each other for this. They are more or less strangers in some instances, and they might not have anything in common. And the situations they get put in together are so extreme that it just really brings out a lot of interesting stuff in that dynamic.
Yes, that's true. Like, it's not like a group of friends that have known each other since childhood most of the time.
Exactly.
Oh, some recent ones that I saw that I didn't think about until this moment. Final Destination 5. They're all...
Oh, yeah, that's true. Yeah, because they're like a part of a crew.
Yeah, and they were like all heading somewhere on a bus. I think was like a retreat or something. I don't remember. I just watched it last week. I do not remember.
I need to get into it. I haven't actually seen it. It looks fun, though.
I think they're all on Netflix right now.
Oh, good.
Netflix has some good horror right now.
Awesome.
I was looking through the other day. I'm like, okay, you're very hit or miss. This month you seem to be a hit.
Hot tip.
Little Monsters on Hulu.
Ooh, okay.
She's I think a kindergarten. Lupita Nyong'o is like a kindergarten teacher taking her kids on a field trip and like zombies, and she kind of is like, this is all part of a game. Like,
oh, that sounds fun.
It was very fun. So recommend that. That's also on Hulu.
Awesome.
So a lot of recs.
Yeah. Oh, there's so much out there. Definitely.
Yeah. This episode is brought to you by Libro FM. Libro FM is the first and only company which lets you purchase audiobooks directly from your favorite local bookstore. You can pick from more than 150,000 audiobooks, including bestsellers and recommendations from booksellers. You'll get the same audiobooks at the same price as the largest audiobook company out there. You know the name. But you'll be part of a different story, one that supports community. If you're new to audiobooks, they're the perfect way to get more books into your busy life. Listen during your commute, while doing chores, walking the dog, or just relaxing at home. All you need is a smartphone and the free Libro FM app. If you already love audiobooks and don't know what to listen to next, check out recommendations and curated lists from people who know audiobooks best. Booksellers. And us. We also have a playlist on there full of books that have been recommended on this podcast. Books in the Freezer special offer. You get 2 audiobooks for the price of one, just $14.99, with your first month of membership using code FreezerBook. This offer is valid for new members in Canada and the United States. Thank you, Libro FM, for supporting the show. All right, well, should we talk about some books?
Yeah, let's get into it.
So my first pick is The Night Stalkers by Christopher Triana and Ryan Harding. I will say up front, this is like a splatterpunk extreme like horror novel, so I think you just need to know that going in. But this is about a group of workers who are forced to work a night shift at the grocery store, but they are ambushed by the workers of their rival store, Devil's Food, who they don't know is just run by Satanists. This is just a book for anyone who has worked in retail of any kind, whether it be like, grocery store, just that whole setup. And the frustrations of dealing with management that's either ineffectual or cruel or, has little regard for like your time and, things that you have planned and, just schedule you in different ways. Like, they schedule you for time that's outside of your availability. And just the horrors of dealing with entitled customers. The book opens up with essentially a Karen at the deli counter of the Devil's Food store. And it opens up with a bang.
I love that it's called Devil's Food. I love that so much. That's incredible.
Yeah, that is the tone of the book. It's very like funny, but like splatterpunk, super gory.
This is great. I haven't read it. I'm adding it immediately.
So you find yourself rooting for this scrappy group of survivors that's like, an older lady that got put in here, like the deli guy, like, obviously some teenagers that are there, like all put together. And I will say, like, there's certain things that are introduced and you're like, they're not gonna go there, surely. They wouldn't do that. They do.
Oof.
I assure you they do. And I was like, oof, okay.
Oh, I love it.
So I will say, not for everyone. It is like very reminiscent of like those B horror movies. So I'm just saying, a lot of boobs, a lot of blood.
Oh,
you get my meaning. So
yeah, sign me up. Into it for sure.
So I will say, Freezer, I would not pick this for a book club at your library. Like, it's extremely gory, but it goes with the genre. And yeah, like, I found it surprising and I thought it was fun. And you really do get connected to these characters and, the different reasons why they're working there and how, like, all these people are being taken advantage of by like upper management that like doesn't care and only cares about numbers. And yeah, the Satanist stuff with the Devil's Food is so over the top and ridiculous, but in a funny way.
Everything sounds so good about this. This sounds very much like my vibe. I'm very excited to pick this up.
So that is The Night Stalkers by Christopher Triana and Ryan Harding.
And I feel like that's my favorite one already of this entire episode. All right, well, we have more though. My first pick is Screams from the Void by Ann Tibbetts, which came out in 2021 from Flametree. And it's a space sci-fi horror and then some. It's got a lot of stuff going on. It's really fast-paced, gory, full of tension. We follow Reyna, a mechanics ensign, on a research mission from the United Space Corps, as it is called at this point, and she's a brilliant mechanic, but she's stuck dealing with both an abusive work environment and the horrors of intimate partner abuse, all while being trapped on this spacecraft. There are major trigger warnings for intimate partner abuse for this book, just FYI. So this is what Reyna's dealing with, and then 2 months before they get to go home to Earth, of course, something starts brutally massacring the crew. They can't really figure out where this thing came from or how it got on the ship, but it is really vicious and seemingly unkillable. Reyna finds herself as one of a few survivors trying to escape whatever this thing is that's hunting them while being completely trapped on this ship. They can't figure out a way off. And the small group who are her coworkers that she's stuck with has both the people who have hurt her the most and the people who have lifted her up the most included in it. So it's a really interesting and potentially dangerous dynamic for her. And for most of the book, you actually don't know who poses the biggest threat. Is it the violent stowaway or her violent coworkers? She's battling both, and Reyna has to find confidence in herself and her skills in order to try to survive all of that, plus space. Like, they're in space. Space is dangerous. But she is, like I said, a brilliant mechanic, and that kind of, comes through in a lot of instances. Like I said, it's really fast-paced and action-packed, and it's pretty brutal. It has a non-linear narrative structure, which I think works really well here. You get to learn a lot about Reyna this way, jumping back and forth from the past when she started this job to the present, kind of seeing how the different relationships between her and her coworkers develops, and you get to see her grow, which is really satisfying. And I really like the character of Reyna a lot. So like I said, it's a space sci-fi horror, but it's also a creature feature. It's a thriller,
Oh,
and
okay.
it's a survival horror. So it's a lot of stuff all wrapped up into one. And I would recommend this for, like I said before, fans of Alien and also Cube, if folks like Cube. Yeah, it has some Cube vibes. And also maybe even The Expanse. I'm speaking of the show. I haven't read the books yet. But if you like the show The Expanse, there's a lot of similarities, I think, present here in this book. I would put this in the freezer, I think. It's really gory. It's pretty brutal and violent. And yeah, it's disturbing. So yeah, I would probably put it in the freezer. And that is Screams from the Void by Ann Tibbetts.
So when you first read this and talked about it online, I had added it to my to-read list because it sounded amazing. But now I think it's going right into my cart. Like I think it's getting pushed up to a book I need to own.
Oh yeah, this minute. Yeah, it's a good one. I really enjoyed it.
So my next pick is Severance by Ling Ma. I will say this is not a horror book per se before people come for me. Okay. Well, it is not. It is dealing with horror elements. We are dealing with kind of a post-apocalyptic / zombie adjacent setting. But this is about Candace, who is a millennial in New York City working for a Bible manufacturing department of a company. And then Shen fever hits and she decides to just self-sequester at work as the fever takes hold of the city. And she's one of the last few survivors. Throughout the day, she kind of goes out and takes pictures of like abandoned New York City and posts it on her blog called NY Ghost. And which is crazy because this book came out but way before the pandemic. So the idea, I think we would not be able to wrap our minds around the idea of like quiet New York City or abandoned New York City. But my sister-in-law is a travel nurse and she was sent up to New York City during COVID, to help at a hospital. And she would send me pictures of just like Times Square empty. Oh, yeah. It's wild.
It was so eerie. My sister lives in Brooklyn. And yeah, she was like, it is a ghost town. It is so strange right now.
A few months later, Candace finds herself as part of a group of survivors. We're kind of going back and forth in time with the chapters. So in the present timeline, she's part of this group and they're led by a man named Bob, who is an IT guy, but he's leading them to the facility where he says they will have everything they need. But Candace is kind of growing weary of Bob and his control over the group. And it's just like a weird, awkward situation. I thought this had a lot of interesting stuff to say about millennials and their relationship to work. And I think specifically hustle culture.
Yes, definitely.
And our relationship to hobbies and rituals. So like Shen fever in this book, when it hits, the zombie state that people take is that they're stuck in a short loop of whatever they were doing when they got infected. So you go to a house and it's just someone like putting dishes away, like, and just stuck doing that until their like fingers bleed and they just like stop breathing and die. Like you're just kind of in this short loop, which was a very interesting take on this, which I thought was fun. And it's about, I think our relationship to rituals and nostalgia and more. And I mean, there was so many layers to this book. Like she's a first generation Chinese immigrant, but, she came over as a kid and she grew up here. So like her relationship to like American culture versus like her parents' relationship to American culture. And I think, and like how titles have several different meanings according to the plot. It's like a severance to your culture and what that means, and severance to like all kinds of stuff. And of course, severance in the like workplace, like receiving a severance. It's just like, it was a very good book. So as I mentioned before, not horror, room temperature, but I thought a very interesting take on zombie apocalyptic stories. And I think very much worth reading. There was so many things that were very fascinating to read post, us dealing with the pandemic. Because this book, I think, came out in like 2018, 2017. Yeah. But about like quarantining and masks and like how people react to something sweeping the nation. And like her workplace being like, oh, it's not a big deal.
Yes.
Don't worry about it. They're not using the word pandemic. Like,
look the other way. It's fine.
We're still going to need you to get that work done. Thank you.
No one will be here to receive it, but you still need to do it. Thanks. Yeah, I read this book during lockdown.
Wow. How was that?
It was really weird. It was very eerie. So many parallels. I was one of those people who picked up a lot of pandemic literature. Yeah, I did. I picked up, that's when I started reading The Stand, which, full transparency here, I still haven't finished. I'm exactly 2 years into reading The Stand. I'll get there. But reading Severance was because it's not necessarily horror, and there, like you said, there's just so many layers and so much commentary about millennial culture and our relationship to work and hobbies and rituals. Like you said, I thought that was a really interesting take, that it made me think a lot differently about what was going on. It was actually pretty comforting to read it during lockdown. And I enjoyed that experience, and it turns out that was like a pretty unique thing to read this book while we were all engaging in something very similar to what was happening in it. And yeah, I really like Severance a lot too. I think it's really beautiful. Also, never follow a man named Bob to something called The Facility. Like, just maybe don't do that,
I don't know. I think maybe in like a post-pandemic world, you just don't have a lot of
that's true.
choices.
I think
you gotta just find a scrappy group of survivors that really fits your vibe.
Yes. And honestly, most places people are going are probably going to be called The Facility, so maybe you don't have a lot of choice in that either. All right, my next pick is also for all the retail workers out there. It's Chopping Spree by Angela Sylvain, which came out in 2021 from Unnerving, and it's part of the Rewind or Die novella series. So if folks aren't familiar with Rewind or Die, it's this really fun series that's kind of in tribute to campy 80s horror, and everything's over the top, and everything's just a really good time, and Chopping Spree is definitely in that category. It's really fast-paced, and it's full of bloody, campy horror fun. We follow Penny as her cool new job at the local mall turns into a deadly situation. What starts off as a fun night working late with her coworkers quickly turns into a suspenseful cat and mouse hunt when Penny and her friends discover another mall employee dead and a madman running around with a wolf mask. Penny, who is normal, is totally prepared to help lead all of her friends to safety, but she quickly learns that maybe they don't want to run away. Maybe they have their own plans in this situation. Chopping Spree has a very fun twist, and it gives the plot a lot of depth. Sylvain writes really well in this short form, I think, and she gives her characters a lot of detail in just only a few pages, and I think that's a true skill to be able to do that. And this novella is absolutely perfect for picking up on a cozy Friday night. It's truly the literary equivalent of like a campy 80s slasher. And actually the name reminds me of one of my all-time favorites, Chopping Mall. If anyone has seen it, yes, that's absolute classic.
Thank you. Have a nice day.
Yeah. I love that one. If folks haven't seen that, we
could have mentioned that too.
That's
I guess
true.
Yeah, those are mall employees.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think it's like a bunch of mall employees and their friends get stuck in a mall. Well, they don't. They stay in a mall late and things go wrong. I'm not giving it away. You guys got to go watch it. It's really fun. And if you have ever worked in a mall before, which I spent many years in the trenches of malls, you will really enjoy the nostalgia and just kind of like, I don't know, again, being redeemed. We all kind of felt like we were sacrifices on the altar of capitalism in a way when you work in a mall. So this kind of is a very cathartic experience reading Chopping Spree. I would say it's probably good for fans of like Fear Street 1994 and any kind of like campy 80s slasher. And this one really does tie back like to that idea of workplace horror as a critique of capitalism, and I really like it here in this book. It does have some gore and violence and suspense, but it's not super intense. I would say it's maybe fridge, maybe just put in the fridge kind of deal. It's cooling down. It's a room temperature on a winter's day sort of deal. But yeah, that's Chopping Spree by Angela Sylvain.
Ooh, I love that. I'm still making, there's so many reminder dice. I'm still kind of making my way through them, but that is getting pushed up the list. That sounds so fun.
Yeah.
I love the cover.
Yes, it's a really fun cover.
But I think, yeah, you're spot on with like the Fear Street 1994. All right. My last pick is a play. It is Pontypool by Tony Burgess. Which is why I didn't mention the movie up top, because I was going to be talking about it here. It is essentially like the screenplay for the movie. This is available on Hoopla, too, if anyone wants to read it. I think as well as the novel, The Pontypool Changes Everything. So this is about a shock jock radio host in the town of Pontypool who's having just a normal day with his two other hosts when an outside correspondent starts relaying strange occurrences happening. There is a bit of an epidemic, and the radio medium seems to be making things worse, is all I'm going to say. And I thought this worked very well as a play, and I mean as a movie, because it is like a one room, like these people don't know what is going on outside. They only have, you know, this information being fed to them, and things keep getting increasingly more and more tense. So another fascinating concept in addition to the zombie genre, and I think saying a lot of important things with influential talk radio and podcasts coming out, and I, you know, the responsibility that comes with having influence, and a large audience. I will say, someone on Goodreads said this is great for fans of Welcome to Night Vale, and I would agree.
Oh
with
yeah,
that
I
too,
could
if
see
you're
that.
looking for something,
definitely
similar to that. So I would recommend this. This was a lot of fun and just like fascinating the way that it turned, and when it's kind of revealed like what is going on, it's really, really interesting. So that is Pontypool by Tony Burgess. I guess I would say this is room temperature, but it is tense and well written and a quick read. I mean, it's a play. So it's like 100 pages and it's all dialogue. So yeah, that is Pontypool by Tony Burgess.
I have not seen the movie or read the play, so I will have to get into both of those because that sounds really interesting.
Yeah. Also, someone said, I didn't notice it, but I think it takes place on Valentine's Day. So it is like a February movie.
Perfect.
Yeah, there we go.
That's perfect. That's what I'll do. That's what I'll force my husband to do on Valentine's Day. Oh, he'll be so excited. I bet he'll like it. I'm being ungenerous, but cool. All right. Well, I have two more.
Go for it.
Awesome. All right. So my next one, this one is like extremely difficult to talk about. It's The 10th Girl by Sarah Faring. Came out in 2019 from Imprint. This book has one of the largest twists I have ever read. Actually, the largest twist. I never would have seen this twist coming. And if anybody claims that they did see this twist coming, not for 1 second do I believe you. So it's going to be a little difficult for me to talk about. But it is, it's gothic and atmospheric, and it is set in Patagonia, and apparently it incorporates Patagonian myth, but I can't speak to whether if that's executed well or not. I'm not familiar with Patagonian myth. But we follow Mavi, who is running away from something. Seems to be fleeing from political violence in Buenos Aires, and she lies about pretty much everything about herself so she can get a job as a teacher at an isolated finishing school for well-off girls in Patagonia. This school is allegedly extraordinarily haunted, as of course all boarding schools for well-off girls are. They must be haunted. And things start to get weird for Mavi almost immediately, and there are clearly secrets everywhere. When one of Mavi's students goes missing, Mavi decides to start investigating, and she uncovers what she initially thinks is proof of a terrifying haunting. But then she keeps investigating, and things keep escalating in weirdness, and then I have to stop talking about it because I can't say anything else. So here's the thing. If you go to the Goodreads page for The 10th Girl, you'll see it doesn't have a great rating. And I suspect that might be because of the twist. It really is kind of out of left field. And, if I would say don't let that discourage you from reading it. The twist did make me mad, I will say, but I had such a great time just engaging with it, just reading it and experiencing it. It really blew my mind. I was like, this is unbelievable that Sarah Faring would decide to go in this direction, that this story even does this. So if this interests you, if you like historical mysteries or horror set in boarding schools, and you are down for an absolutely ridiculous twist, definitely give The 10th Girl a try. There were some genuinely creepy moments in this book, like very spooky vibes. It's gothic, and there is kind of like a haunting storyline. But I would say this is more room temperature. Perhaps we put it in the room temperature during the winter stack. You know, it's cooler but not fridge worthy. And that is The 10th Girl by Sarah Faring. And then my last selection for today is actually a short story. It's Friday Black by Nana Kwame Adjei-Brenyah, and it's the title story of his 2018 collection, which was published by Mariner Books. And this is a really interesting take on zombies, and I would even say kind of like pandemic horror a little bit, and capitalism horror. We follow a young man who is the top sales lead at an unnamed retail store in a mall on Black Friday. It's very clear early on that there is something different about this Black Friday, or this like world's Black Friday. It's not necessarily our world or the way that we engage in Black Friday. Sales associates are just casually preparing for what seems like war. And there's even like a designated section in the store to pile bodies. They're like, that's the body spot. Or like they've got brooms where they're like sweeping bodies over. And once they open for Black Friday, it becomes obvious why. Shoppers are infected with something that's referred to as the Friday Black, which makes them ultra-violent and single-mindedly focused on acquiring the hot item of the year, and they're very animalistic at this point. Most of them have lost the ability to speak, but our protagonist was bit by one of these materialistic zombies like in the past, and so now he has the ability to understand their needs on a really deep level. For example, like he knows that they need a specific jacket, but he also knows why they think they need it. They need it so that their husband will love them, or so that the mean girls will stop bullying them, or so they can get that promotion. So it's very much that he's hearing them thinking these things as they're just kind of like groaning and drooling and gnashing their teeth and like trying to get at him and all of the merchandise. So our protagonist's goal in this short story is to have the highest sales at his store, which he's not concerned about that because he's the best and he will hit that. But if he gets the highest, he can take home a really expensive coat for his mom, something they wouldn't have been able to afford otherwise. And he feels like this will prove to her that he loves her and that he's a good son. But as the day continues, he starts to realize that that is kind of the game that they're forced to play in order to keep themselves distracted from essentially being worked to death and being put in this like really dangerous situation on Black Friday, quote unquote. And I love this entire short story collection. I think that it's genius and brutal and amazing, but this story in particular really hit me as someone who did spend a lot of time working in retail. Retail employees are treated horribly. You know, I think a lot of us have spent time doing some form of retail. And we also really get hit with that whole, like, we're a family, you got to be a good team member, like, you got to support each other, like those lines. And that just kind of helps us be exploited more. And you definitely see that in this story. And as retail employees, we also see firsthand the ugly sides of materialism and capitalism and all of these things wrapped together are in Friday Black, the story. The story focuses a lot on the idea that the things we own and buy for others and ourselves directly translates to love and self-worth, which is a very toxic idea. But unfortunately, I think it's pretty prevalent in our culture, in the American culture. The characters in this story literally become infected by this, which I don't think is a stretch for how we feel about items and things and buying and, you know, especially in the US. But it's really creative, and I would love for more people to read Adjei-Brenyah's entire collection. It has a lot of horror in it, and it has sci-fi, it has fantasy, it has speculative fiction, and it's incredibly dark and creative and interesting. And I think if you like Karen Russell, like kind of her style, okay. Yeah, and also if you like horror, you'll definitely like Friday Black, the collection as a whole. This story, I would say, is more room temperature. It does have a lot of disturbing moments, but they're quieter. They make you think. They are disturbing, but they're not as in your face. But the other stories in this collection, there are some that are absolutely freezer worthy. They're very terrifying and gross and gory and intense. So definitely pick it up if you're into that sort of thing, which I would expect most people listening to this would be.
Yeah.
So that's Friday Black by Nana Kwame Adjei-Brenyah.
Ooh, I am adding that to the TBR.
It has a really cool cover, too. The cover is, like, gorgeous.
Well, other ones I wanted to mention real quick. I won't even be getting into it, but with retail, also had to mention Horror Store by Grady Hendrix.
Ooh, yes.
Like a haunted IKEA, essentially. So.
Definitely.
And The Family Plot by Sherry Priest. That is about a salvage crew that is sent to, empty out a house. And of course, like that house, there's some stuff going on there, some supernatural stuff. They find like a cemetery in the backyard, and they're like, "What did we sign up for?"
Ooh. I've heard such good things about that book. I'm gonna have to pick that up.
It is a fun one. I really enjoyed it. What we got for books then?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like there are so many. You guys have already talked about The Other Black Girl on this podcast before, and I think that kind of that fits. Obviously, it takes place in like a workplace, but also I almost picked for a deeper dive Secret Santa, that I think was like really kind of going around, especially like Bookstagram. People a few years ago were like really into it. It's a lot of fun. It's Christmas themed workplace horror where the main character works at a publishing industry or a publishing house where there's just like some occult dealings, and it's a lot of fun. It's a good read for Christmas time.
Great. Well, I was telling you earlier, like there was some books I picked up that dealt with corporate horror, but really got into like this bureaucracy and all this red tape and all this stuff, and I was so bored. And I'm like, I understand that this is what you're going for, but I can't do this.
No.
Respectfully, I'm tapping out.
Yeah, if I wanted to do that, I'd just go to work. Thanks.
Like if I wanted to just be bogged down with emails, I would. Thank you.
Yes, allow me to add my work email to my personal cell phone real quick, and then I'll enjoy that experience on the daily.
Absolutely. No, thank you. And well, as is tradition on this podcast, what is a chilling obsession? What's something you've been enjoying in horror lately?
Yes. Well, it's both an old and new chilling obsession. I was preparing my body and soul for the new Scream movie, and so I had to consume all of the Scream content, and I love Scream. It's my favorite, and I watch all of them on the regular, so it's not like I was really refreshing myself out of nowhere for the new movie. But I did get into the Scream TV series. Yes. So I had watched the first season back closer to when it actually aired, but then I just kind of dropped off, and I was like, might as well go see what's going on with that. And it turns out there are 2 more seasons. So it's on Netflix now, and it is surprisingly good and fun. I was not expecting it to really be that great when I watched the first season the first time, and I was blown away by how good of a job they did. It's a lot of fun. It's it's Scream, but not. They definitely take some liberties. And there are 3 seasons. They're short, though. They're not a huge time commitment. And so I am currently rewatching the first season and getting excited to jump into 2 and 3. So yes, that is my chilling obsession, is just completely absorbing myself in Scream content, and specifically the Scream TV series, which I think originally aired on MTV.
Yeah, I was going to say, I was in the same headspace where I'm like, my expectations for this are very low. This is like an MTV production, which, like, fine. Like, it has its place.
Yes.
But I just said I was a big 16 and pregnant.
Oh, yeah.
Obsessive. But yeah, I remember being very impressed. And like some of the kills are gory.
Oh, yeah.
I'm like, okay. All right. You're bringing your A game. Respect.
Oh yeah, they don't mess around at all. There are moments, like one thing that really bothers me is when people run around pools, or if people are wet and are fleeing, Like, there's just, I don't know how to describe it, but like I keep thinking about people slipping and breaking a bone, and that for some reason grosses me out more than like being stabbed 1,000 times. So the pilot of the Scream TV series opens with a situation like this, and it was really getting under my skin. And I was like, man, they're pushing my buttons. Oh.
Well, and that house looked like very slick. Like that
so
floor,
slick.
I'm like, that is a slick floor.
That...
And you were just running around all wet.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Get some
yes.
flip-flops.
So many sharp angles. So
yes,
many.
It was very modern.
Yeah. So many panes of glass that you could go through.
Yes.
Oof.
Oh my gosh. Well, I was obsessed with Yellow Jackets. I blew through it in a few days. And I'm obsessed.
Yeah, I need to get into that. I have to acquire it. I have to figure out a way to view it, if you know what I mean. But yeah, I hear
I did the trial.
Oh, that's smart. I should just do that.
You can do a Hulu add-on, and it's very easy.
Oh, perfect. Okay, I'll just do that. I'll be reputable for once. Yeah. Everybody says it's incredible, and it's absolutely up my alley. Like, it sounds like something I would really enjoy. So I'm going to get there and probably also be very obsessed.
But for those of you who don't know, it is about, there's dual timelines. So it's like a present day timeline and a 90s timeline. But it's this varsity soccer girls team that is heading to nationals in a private plane. Their plane goes down somewhere, I want to say the Pacific Northwest, in the mountains. And they are stuck there. And you learn that they have been stuck there for 19 months.
Wow.
And you follow 4 of the survivors in present day, and I was just so excited to see Christina Ricci and Juliette Lewis like doing stuff again. Melanie Linsky is also fantastic. Just like the whole cast is great. Like, I love the 90s timeline people, and people have been saying it's like Lost meets Lord of the Flies. It's good. The opening scene is wild and just sets the tone. Like, I just can't stop recommending it enough.
I can't wait.
Well, moving on to our second tradition on the show. Jocelyn, what is your final girl song?
Oh, I love it. So the first time I was lucky enough to be a guest, I picked kind of what my final girl song would be if I were in a horror comedy, a la Shaun of the Dead. So now I'm going to go with my serious final girl song, and that is Holy Roller by Spirit Box. And it's very intense metalcore, heavy hitting, screaming, like guttural kind of stuff. And it's very much like you are hunting down your enemies and smearing their blood on your face kind of song, you know? Okay. Yeah, it's intense. It kind of feels like is it You're Next, when the final girl is really, I don't want to ruin that movie for folks, but she has some particular set of skills that the assailants don't realize what they're getting into, and she kind of completely kicks all the ass. That is very like Holy Roller vibes.
Oh, I like that. I love You're Next.
Yeah, it's a good one.
I watched it recently, like I want to say last year or the year before, for the first time, and I was like, why have I not watched this?
It's really
100% up my alley.
Yeah, it's like it really went under the radar. And I only think recently people are talking about, like, you know, this was a really good movie. Everyone should watch this, which I'm glad now people are talking about it. But yeah, when it came out, I don't think anybody really heard of it or knew that it was a thing.
I feel like the exposure I had to it was her on like best final girl lists that I saw more than the movie itself.
Yes, she's a phenomenal final girl. She's absolutely one of my favorites. She just like makes you so excited, like everything. I don't want to ruin it, because that's the best part when you learn about her past and her skill set. Like, it makes you so excited to be like, yes, go get them. I love it.
I mean, like, I do love the like, coming home and like meeting the significant other's family. What could possibly go wrong?
It's a great trope. I love it too.
I feel like it would pair good with Ready or Not, like also like marrying into this family and like
yes. Oh, I love Ready or Not.
Thank you so much for coming on and talking to me about job horror, workplace horror.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me again. This is always a ton of fun. And yeah, this was a fun topic. It was easy to do. There was so much just flooding into my brain that we could talk about. And yeah, I mean, if other people have fun workplace horror that they like, I would love to hear it. because it's something I enjoy reading.
Where can people find you online?
Well, I am on a bit of a social media break, but I will be coming back. No, don't fear, everyone. I'll be returning. I'm not really that active anyway, but I am at Forgotten Corners on Instagram, and I'm also at Forgotten Corners on Twitter, but just take all the vowels out. So just leave the consonants.
Forgotten Corners.
Yeah. I hate vowels. Yeah, so yep, Forgotten Corners on Instagram and Twitter. Yeah, thanks.
Books in the Freezer is a bi-weekly podcast. We post episodes every other Tuesday. You can find us on Twitter at BooksFreezerPod, on Instagram at Books in the Freezer, Facebook at facebook.com/booksinthefreezer, on TikTok at Books in the Freezer, or you can send us an email at booksinthefreezer@gmail.com. If you would like to support the show, there are a few ways to do that. One of them is to become a Patreon supporter at patreon.com. And there is a $1, $3, and a $5 level with all kinds of perks, from like early episode releases to Voxer chats to bonus episodes to getting to participate in episode discussions. Like, I let you know if an author's coming on and give you the chance to ask questions. So check that out if any of that sounds interesting to you. That is patreon.com/booksinthefreezer. We also have an Amazon link that is in the show notes. It essentially just takes you to Amazon. You do your normal shopping you would normally do, and a small percentage of that goes to help the podcast. If you would like to support the show without spending any money, that is totally possible. One of the ways to do that is to leave a review on something like Apple Podcasts or Spotify, or to just share on social media and talk about the show, post it on your stories. Anything like that really helps. And just a big thank you to all of you who have taken the time to do that. I very much appreciate it. I'm Stephanie. You can find me on Twitter at lady_Gagnon. That's LADY_GAGNON. And I'm on Instagram at That's What She Read. And that is That's with 2 A's. So thank you so much. It is officially time to clock out. Thank you for listening, and see you next time on Books in the Freezer.